All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the ITS seminar for this week. I am very pleased to introduce our guest, Tanisha Taylor, who's the Executive Director of the California Transportation Commission since 2003. She has a major role in affecting the outcome of all policies and actions adopted by the Commission, including programming and allocation of several $billion annually for transportation in California. She began as the Chief Deputy Director in May of 2020, and prior to joining the Commission, held positions at the California Association of Councils of Governments and the San Joaquin Council of Governments, where she was responsible for the diverse voices of regional transportation agencies statewide. She has numerous accolades. The Sisters of Neo Women on Fire Flame Carrier Award, which she won last year, which recognizes the leadership of Black women who inspire, uplift, and pave the way for future generations. WTS Sacramento Chapter's Woman of the Year Award for accomplishments with the Commission. The 2015 Certificate of Appreciation from the Stockton Chapter of the NAACP for her work leading the regional transportation planning process. And she's a graduate of Alabama A&M University, one of the nation's historically Black colleges and universities. So I will turn it over to Director Taylor.
Thank you. For the rest. So first thing I'm going to say, Tanisha is good enough. I want to remind us all, we're even at the top, we're just people. And so as you start your career, you're working with people, even people with big titles are just people. And it's really important because you're going to start, as you develop your career, you're going to know who somebody is by how important that title is to them. So I'm the Executive Director of the California Transportation Commission, and maybe I'll ask the question of, is everyone familiar with the California Transportation Commission? Because if you guys are all pretty familiar or fairly familiar, I'll kind of skip the high level stuff and kind of talk more about some of the policies and the different things that we're working on across the commission. So I see some head nods. Okay, so I'll skip that part and we'll talk about kind of what some of our policy issues are. So we started in 1978, so we're approaching our 50-year anniversary. And it's important to note that the commission, even though the commission as it stands today started in 1978, the commission has been a long-standing agency in various different forms. And so we go back to the state highway system. We are the agency who made the decisions on where the state highway system should be. Our predecessor agency did that. And so we own those decisions. And I'll talk about how important that is when we talk about how we invest those billions of dollars. So each year, we invest roughly $12 billion across the state of California every single year. We meet every 6 weeks in various locations throughout the state, and every 6 weeks we dole out $1 billion or more. When we're awarding our SB1 programs, which are those gas tax dollars, we can get upwards of $2 billion because when we adopt our SB1 programs, we, in 3 actions, put out $1.7 billion in gas tax funding over a period of 2 years. And so our primary function, and you kind of heard this and know this, is we program and allocate funds. But I'll be honest, messaging is really important when you're the executive director of an agency. So my team loves to talk about how we program and allocate dollars. I say we invest dollars in communities and the economy. That is something that the average person can understand. And as people who are going to be working in the transportation space, we can use a lot of jargon, we can use a lot of acronyms, we can use a lot of words. The people we serve will not understand what we're talking about. They will not understand if I say, oh, I programmed $1 billion in your community last week. It's amazing. They're like, oh, so you're going to build it tomorrow? I'm like, no, it's in 4 years. But if I say I'm investing $1 billion over the next 4 years in your community, they understand that. And they can look at the projects and they can understand what those projects mean for their communities and how they're going to benefit them. We have a multitude of fund sources that come into the commission for us to then allocate and invest in communities. So we have federal funding that comes into the commission. We have state funding. We partner with local and regional measure programs. And so there is a lot of money that comes through the commission, whether it be directly allocated and approved by the commission, or whether it's tagging to a project that the commission is going to allocate funding to. And so that's really important because when I say we have partners across the state, we have partners across the state. Even the state of California doesn't have enough money to pay for the transportation system in the state of California. The commission does not deal with transit operations, and we have limited funding for transit capital. Only a couple of the programs that the commission administers can, by law, fund transit capital projects. And that's really important because anyone who actually has an intimate knowledge of the commission, we're often known as they build highways over there. They don't like transit. It's not that we don't like transit. We love transit. We live in the communities we serve. We have limitations of the fund sources that we use, and the limitations of the fund sources, which are based in statute and federal law, really limit what we can invest in and how we make decisions on what we invest in. And so one of those things is Senate Bill 1. Senate Bill 1, most of you probably know as a gas tax. The gas tax, many portions of it come through the commission, whether it be through our Solutions for Congested Corridors program, our Trade Corridor Enhancement program, or our local partnership program. The Solutions for Congested Corridors program's largest focus, it's largely going to deal with congestion relief, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, those kinds of things. We have to meet a multitude of goals across each of our fund sources. We have federal goals, we have state goals, we have local and regional goals through regional transportation plans. And so in all of our programs, we are looking at how we can meet the most goals with the limited resources we have. So we make tough decisions. We pick winners and losers. And so you can imagine at an agency that picks winners and losers in billion-dollar decisions, shocking. We have a lot of politics that play into our process as well. It's not uncommon for me to get a call from a member of the legislature, a private citizen, and anywhere in between, depending on the decisions we are making. It is not uncommon, and this is something that most of you will deal with, and it is very hard. It is not uncommon for us to have a project before us that people oppose. It is not uncommon when we have a safety project for a grieving mother or father to come and tell us about their agony. And so it is a tough job, but it is a rewarding job. Those days where we have someone talking about someone they've lost on the system are tough days. We do cry on the dice. There are feelings involved because we're talking about real people's lives, and the investments that we make have positive impacts in people's lives. They can mean the difference between somebody living and dying on the roadway. And so we take our responsibilities very seriously because those billion-dollar decisions make differences in people's lives. It can be the difference between somebody getting to work. And so when we talk about investing funding and when we talk about SB1, right, we've all kind of heard transportation revenues are declining because more people are walking. Cars are becoming more fuel efficient, trucks are becoming more fuel efficient, and we're losing revenue. So the gas tax is declining year over year. Our largest program, which is the State Highway Operation Protection Program, that funds it. You may have heard the term fix it first or maintenance and those different things. That program funds our maintenance program. It funds the protection of our bridges. It funds repaving roadways. It funds safety projects on the highway. That program over the next 5 years, based on our revenue estimates, is down $2.4 billion with a B. It's a $17 billion program over 5 years. So $2.4 billion is a significant decline. And so at the commission, when we talk about those projects that impact people's lives, when revenues are down, we have to delay the delivery of those projects. We have to push them out to when we have the revenue to deliver those projects. And we have to look at state goals. We have to look at state law. We have to look at federal law for what the priorities are, what the requirements we have to meet, right? Because Across our programs, we have to meet certain performance requirements under federal law. We have to meet certain GHG requirements. We have to meet criteria requirements. For SB1, we have to meet congestion relief requirements. And all of those things, just because we're down $2.4 billion, guess what? The goals don't change. So we have to tighten our belt to figure out how we're going to make these tough funding decisions that still continue us making progress towards our goals so that we're not breaking our promises to the voters. Because remember, SB1 is something that the voters passed. The legislature passed it first, and then it had to go to a 2/3 vote of the voters. And so when we talk about how we manage our funds, we also have to recognize that we have to be true to the voters who gave us their belief and trust to invest the funds in the way that we told them we would. And so that's really important, especially with SB1, because you guys may or may not know there was a repeal effort of SB1. Many voters did not think the state of California was trustworthy enough to spend the transportation revenue and the gas tax that they just gave us on transportation. And I'm going to be honest, that was not because we had been good stewards. There were diversions. In lean years, we would move money over here, and it's close to transportation, we'd move money over there. No, that was before my time. I'm pretty young. I didn't do that. But when the voters say, what am I getting for the gas tax? They have to know that they're getting what they voted for. And so there is this public trust part of the commission because we are an external facing agency. So all of our meetings are open to the public. They are streamed. You can watch us in real time from wherever you are. You can comment in real time on our items from wherever you are. And everything we do can make or break billion-dollar decisions. And so across my 11 commissioners, 9 are appointed by the governor, 1 by the Senate Rules Committee, 1 by the Assembly Speaker. They all are appointed for 4 years. They are independent of the governor and the administration. So even though the governor appoints them, he appoints them for 4 years. On other boards and commissions, their commissioners can be removed at any time. They serve at the will of the governor. The reason the commissioners don't serve at the will of the governor is because we make tough decisions. And in order for us to make those tough decisions, especially about winners and losers in a political environment, they have to feel like they are free of retribution and reprimand. And so every time we award SB1 in our competitive programs, the Solutions for Congested Corridors, Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, and Local Partnership Program, there are winners and losers. There are people who are mad at us. If somebody's not mad at me on any given day, I am not doing my job. Just reality, and it's okay. I want to say that strongly. The more influence you have, the more people will be mad at you for no reason at all, other than you made a decision. And that's okay. Do not take it personal. Do not worry about those things, right? You do have to pay attention to the politics and the decision making around you. But you will never please everyone. You will never, ever please everyone. It is impossible. And you will have a heart attack if you try. And so I want to leave you with that message as well, because I want you guys to have fruitful careers. I want you to make sure that you prioritize your families as you go through your careers. Because there will be days where you are like, I just slayed a dragon and this is the best day I've ever had. There will be days where you question your impact. We all do. There's nothing wrong with you if you're doing that. It's normal. Just make sure you have good mentors who remind you, celebrate the small things, because transportation is a slow moving art, but you got to celebrate those small wins, but you got to celebrate the big wins, and you got to do it together. So those things are really important. The next thing I want to talk about is kind of our strategic plan. And so the commission, we just adopted our strategic plan last year. It is the first strategic plan the commission's had. And everybody knows what a strategic plan is? Yes, I see that's okay. Just want to make sure. I don't want to assume anything and then have somebody be left out because, and many of you guys heard me say this from other classes or lunch. I am an introvert. I am afraid of the table I sit at. When I started my career, I didn't think I belonged. None of those things are true. I am still an introvert and I am the executive director of the California Transportation Commission. You don't have to talk a lot. You don't have to be the loudest person in the room. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You don't have to even be the best at your job, but you have to be a good team player. And you got to find people who fill your weaknesses, because that's how you're going to be successful. Is the network you build and the people you surround yourself with are going to be the team that kind of goes into all of these kind of conversations. And so our strategic plan is meant to make sure that we as an agency are rowing in the same direction. And so we have 6 goals. We prioritize safety. We elevate community voices. We ensure a healthy environment for all. We move people and goods efficiently because we have a freight sector as well that we deal with at the commission. And you've already heard me talk about this. We partner for success because we don't have enough money to deliver all of these projects. So when I say the commission delivers and invests $1 billion, we invest $1 billion for a $5 billion portfolio of projects. And so we bring a lot of people to the table. And then the thing that's most important to me, just because I'm a people person, is we're going to support a team where people continue to thrive. And people are the ones that are going to do the work. Like, everybody thinks the executive director runs the agency and the things. I don't run the things. I have a team that runs the things. I manage people, and I manage people's feelings, and I manage how people work together, and I manage how people communicate and how we implement the larger vision that I set. In my early days of my career, I was an air quality planner. I could tell you how to flip MFAC 100 times over and what emissions are coming out of a tailpipe. But as the executive director, I now have somebody who runs MFAC for us. I now have somebody who manages our Solutions for Congested Corridors program for us. I manage the interpersonal dynamics between my team and the interpersonal dynamics between state agencies and the interpersonal dynamics between us and regional agencies or other states or elected officials. And that has become my job. And so as you're building those relationships, one of the things I often tell my team, you will have hard conversations. Make sure the first time you have that hard conversation isn't the first time you're introducing yourself to that person. It makes it so much easier when you know their name and you say, "Hi, how are the kids? I'm sorry, I've got some really bad news." And you can laugh afterwards because you're still going to have that cordial relationship. Because I don't know how many times I've called somebody and said, "Hey, I'm deleting your project. I know you needed that $100 million. I know it's important. You can come back and compete in our programs again." But being able to say, "Hi, Stephanie, how are things going? Let's talk about this as people and as peers and not as adversaries." When you're as adversaries, then you got to deal with a lot of politics, and nobody's trying to manage the politics because everybody's in their corners and they're posturing with each other. And that's not what we want to do. We don't want to posture. We want to work together even in the hard times. So as you build your network of people throughout your career, you'll find transportation is a niche field. Many of the people in this room you will see again in 20 years. You will call them over your careers. You will ask those questions. You will say, "Hey, I know we haven't talked in a while, but I just wanted to check on you. And I've got this question because I know you wrote your thesis on it and I don't understand it now." And so remember that connections matter and people matter. People matter more than the things. Oftentimes we get lost and we manage the things and not the people. And so I really focus hard on supporting a team where people continue to thrive. And so when we talk about all this, it's really important as we're considering the decisions, the funding decisions, especially where we have discretionary authority. And I'll talk about where we have discretionary authority and where we do not. So in some programs, we can pick the projects and we have the discretionary authority over. Those are going to be our SB1 competitive projects, Solutions for Congested Corridors, Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, and Local Partnership Program. when the commission is the agency that picks the projects, we, like other agencies, have to balance a myriad of goals, including our strategic plan goals, but our climate change goals, our congestion relief goals, our accessibility goals, all of the goals that are in state statute, federal statute, that are in regional transportation plans. We're looking across all of those things. Now, can we meet them all of the time? No, it's kind of like a balloon. You push one side in, another side goes out. You push that side back in, another side goes out. So we're constantly steering the ship across each meeting of that $1 billion investment to really understand which goals are on track, which goals are not. So we have something that we call a benchmark report. We get an update on the benchmark report every year. The benchmark report, so SB1 had specific metrics within it. Every year, we get an update on how our investments are moving us towards those metrics or not. And then we adjust our investments based on how we're moving towards those metrics and that were approved in the law. We do that in all of our programs. Now, Solutions for Congested Corridors, Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, Local Partnership Program, those are the places where we have the most discretion. We also have programs where we have almost no discretion. So in the State Transportation Improvement Program, we have about $3 billion every 4 years. And in that program, I say the commission has a thumbs up or thumbs down vote. And what that really means is when we get to the end of the process, the decision before the commission is not which projects across that $3 billion portfolio should the commission pick, but is to adopt the entire thing or reject the entire thing. And so we have almost no discretion because our only discretion is it consistent with the statute? Meaning, are they eligible to be in the program? So the regional agencies develop what we call the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, which is one side of the step. Caltrans develops the Interregional Transportation Improvement Program, which are the projects that connect across regions. And then those two things come together to become a step. And so they have all of the policymaking authority, and the commission simply says it is eligible or it is not. And we accept the entire thing or reject the entire thing. Now, honestly and candidly, there's a bill called SB 45. And sometime in 1998, the commission got a little precarious and precocious, and we decided we were going to pick projects, we were going to throw things out. And the legislature said, thank you, but no thank you. Your authority is to accept it or reject it. You don't get to pick the projects because we don't like the way you're picking projects. And so we're very sensitive about how we pick projects because at any point in time, the legislature can run a bill and can limit our authority. And so there's this delicate balance. The commission is an odd entity in state government. We are an independent agency whose budgetary authority, so our staff positions and things, are under the California State Transportation Agency, which is we call it the administration, but there are agencies that fall directly under the governor's line. We are kind of off to the side. We are in between the legislature and the governor. And the commission is independent for a very important reason. The governor changes and the policies change. We make $1 billion decisions and projects that take 12 years to deliver on average. You can't swing one way politically and then one way the next year and then one way the next year and be able to deliver the portfolio of projects. And so the legislature wants to remind us that they're there and they tell us how to do things. The governor wants to remind us that they're there and that they remind us to do things. And so we're constantly in this push and pull, especially when the governor's office and the governor are not necessarily aligned with the legislature on an issue. We're constantly threading that. So let's talk about policy issues and challenges. The first one we're going to talk about is equity. And so one of the things the commission did many years ago, probably about 3 or 4 years ago, is we actually adopted our racial equity statement. And unlike many other state agencies who kind of said, you know, we've done some harm, it's equity, we actually owned it. We said we were the agency that picked the locations where the interstate state highways. And because we were the agency who did it, we needed to do something about it. And so we developed a discrete action plan. And we said we're gonna implement what we call our interagency equity advisory committee. The committee has been functioning for 3 years now. They give us guidance on our program guidelines, on our project selection, and a lot of different things. We are acknowledging and actually working to resolve some of those issues that we created ourselves. And so one example of how we're embedding equity, we do right-of-way matters, right? We do eminent domain for Caltrans. We take people's land. We do. And one of the things that we often have to talk about is, what does this mean? Who is the property owner? So we actually have property owners come to the commission. They have a right to appear before the commission. We call it a contested resolution of necessity. Our usual process, we give people 3 minutes for a public comment. If you are a property owner who is coming because the state of California is taking your land, there is no time limit. You can talk for an hour as long as you're not continuing to repeat the same issues. And then we make Caltrans answer questions if the commission has questions, or if they haven't designed their product well enough, or if the necessity for their project isn't quite there. And sometimes the commission will send Caltrans back to do more work. And those things are really important to making sure that we're respecting people's rights. Because taking land is not something that you should ever take lightly. That's part of what we did, right? We took people's land and we didn't pay for it. We at least pay for it now, which is progress, but there are still other things that we need to continue to do. And so not only are we kind of doing those things, we're also with equity, we are also embedding our equity advisory committees guiding principles and their foundational principles into our work, how we communicate our work. And so when we start to talk about guiding principles, there's things like acknowledging past harm, things like economics and how does that impact things like safety. And one example, we have a project that we call sleeping cabins. The state of California is selling land to the city of San Diego to provide sleeping cabins for unhoused individuals. Shocking, some people oppose that. When we talk about that, right, we have to talk about the reality. We have to educate our commissioners about what's really going on, because it's not just that we're providing housing for unhoused individuals. We are providing safety. We are providing opportunity for economic mobility. We are providing wraparound services that are necessary in the community by selling the parcel of land that the state of California owns to the city to provide this service. That really matters when you have a community that says, we don't want it here. And we've never wanted it here. Why are you coming, state of California? How dare you put this here? It's helpful to remind people of benefits of doing and making the hard decisions that we have. The next issue I'll talk about is climate change. Climate change is probably one of the most obvious issues of our generation, right? It is an existential crisis. The investments that the commission makes, we do invest in widening roadways. We do, because there is a reality that the state of California cannot build a transit system that is robust enough in the next year, maybe by 2050, that will meet all of the needs of the residents of the state of California. People still have to get to work. They still have to be able to move. Congestion is not bad, but it's not good either once it gets to a certain level. And so when we talk about climate change, we have to balance the widenings with the different types of positive things. Like, are you bringing complete streets to your projects? Or do you have sidewalks? Are you opening up a bottleneck that's creating too much induced demand? Those are the things that we ask our applicants when they're competing for our solution for our SB1 competitive programs. And so we also talk about, is your city engaging in efficient land use? Right? We know land use and the connection to transportation really matters in emissions development. And so what are you doing? Are you using California Department of Housing and Community Development's pro-housing designation, meaning that you are being a partner, a good partner in the delivery of housing in the state of California and connecting jobs, houses, and transportation in an efficient way so that we can reduce emissions. We also have our active transportation program, which is about $600 million every year. That helps us with that as well. Let's see, the next area I want to talk about is, I just talked about that one. My team's really good. They gave me some good notes. All right. So the last issue area that I'll talk about real quickly before maybe I open it up for questions about specific things that the commission does. We do a lot of things from right of way to investing in transit, capital transit, not operations, to different planning, things like the California Transportation Plan, which sets out the state's vision. Caltrans developed that for us. We provide oversight for Caltrans to make sure that we're all following the law. We also are a responsible agency under the California Environmental Quality Act, which means every project that we allocate money and invest money in, we ensure that they're complying with CEQA before we actually allocate those dollars. And so the last issue I'll talk about is transportation funding. It's kind of a lightning rod right now, shocking. We have done many studies on road user charge and sustainable funding. We've also done a study called the 1121 Transportation Needs Assessment, which looks across all modes of transportation, including the operations side of transportation, and has identified a $215 billion deficit or hole need over the next 10 years. Now, when we talk about SB1 closed a piece of the gap, but even SB1, the gas tax, acknowledged that it would not meet all of the needs at the time in 2017. The needs have grown since then to $215 billion over the next 10 years. And they're growing because needs are going like this, revenues are going like this. And so as we continue to study, now I'll say this openly on it, we are not implementing a road user charge today. We are studying a road user charge. And it's important that I say that because the politics right now are gnarly. But if we do nothing and we have 100% of new vehicle sales being zero emission vehicles or being more fuel efficient, or we're successful on things like SB 375 and getting people to walk or ride their bike, all great things, we will not have enough revenue to support the transportation system. We won't. And I'm not talking about the bells and whistles, pretty things that everybody loves. I'm talking about keeping our bridges up. And so we have to solve the funding issue. We have to resolve it because we are already starting to push projects out and to delay them because we don't have enough funding for them. Now, road user charge, on the surface, it's our preference as state agencies. We don't say that publicly because I'm not allowed to say it publicly, but it is. Reality is, it's an election year, though, as well. And as planners, as transportation professionals, we will all work for an elected official. Even if you're a consultant, if you work for a city, at the end of the day, you work for an elected official, an elected or an appointed official. Those are just who the decision makers are for 99% of us. And politicians like to know what the public thinks. And right now we have high unaffordability. Up until the Supreme Court struck it down today, we had high tariffs. We have high cost. We have a lack of trust in government. And in order to replace the gas tax with something else, it's going to take a vote of the public. In order for the public to give us a 2/3 supermajority across the state of California, they have to trust us. They have to see what we're investing in. And they have to believe that we're going to do something well. Right now, that's not the case. Right now, I've got members of the legislature in Twitter wars about road user charge, saying things like, if Sacramento, aka state government, had done a better job on high-speed rail, we wouldn't need a road user charge. We wouldn't need any new funding source. We have enough money. That is not true. It is patently false. Our shop is down $2.4 billion over the next 5 years. That takes us out to 2030. It will be lower in the next fund estimate until it goes to zero if we don't do something. Now, reality is road user charge is probably not going to be the only solution. We have to have some cost efficiency measures because the public rightfully and wrongfully so, believes that government is inefficient. And so we have to show them that we are more efficient in how we are spending their dollars. In SB1, one of the things that was put into SB1 as an efficiency measure was a $100 million decline in Caltrans costs. They had to find $100 million in savings year over year over year to prove to the voters that it was really important that we were serious about being efficient and good stewards of the dollars that we were using. And so maybe I'll stop there. There's a lot about the commission, but maybe I'll stop there. You guys can ask me questions. You can ask me personal questions about leadership as well. I'm not shy. I'm not shy to be vulnerable or anything else. Those of you at lunch know I'm an open book. So maybe I'll stop there and I'll let you ask some questions.
Yeah, actually, I was really curious about sort of the interplay between the commission and the discretionary grant programs from like USDOT, because obviously those projects to be successful in being funded need local and state match.
Yep.
And so you guys as a funding authority, like how do you like right time the votes to, it's in my mind, it's like chicken and an egg, right? Because you guys need to say, we're ready to go, but we're not sure the federal government will give us that money. And then the federal government saying, we need to see support from the state. And I was thinking a lot about like the Otay Mesa East project, which, huge investment by the federal government.
I worked on that.
Me too, when I was at DOT, and it was like, it's constantly moving because the dollars are changing, cost of everything goes up, and then you're constantly reworking the abacus to get to the right amount. So I was just curious if you could talk a bit about the politics of trying to like time projects that the state and cities want to be successful for a DOT discretionary grant, but still keeping you guys in control with the commission's vote.
So some of this is the difference between a discretionary commission program and a formula commission program like the STIP, right? So for the STIP, our regional agencies have a lot of control, almost all control over the STIP. And so they can align very easily the dollars from the STIP with a federal discretionary opportunity and move those forward. And so there's two parts of the commission process. The first part is we program the money. The second part is we allocate the money, meaning we actually give it to them. And you have to come to the commission for both actions. And so our allocation process matches and aligns with the federal obligation process, where the feds are actually giving you the cash, because even under the federal process, it's a two-step process. You program the dollars, meaning kind of like your bank account, you're holding it in line so that when your mortgage comes due, the money's there. The federal government does the same thing with transportation money. We do the same thing with state transportation money. And so we're going to program it. It's going to be in the FTIP. It's going to be in our STIP. And then we're going to obligate those dollars in a line. And so our process says we allocate first, the feds come after, so that the feds know that the money is there. And that's how we align it on the formula side. It's really easy on the formula side.
Yeah.
It's really hard on the competitive side. So we have different pieces within our competitive program guidelines. So in some cases, like in our trade corridor enhancement program, for example, we actually allow agencies to come off cycle. So we award products every 2 years. If we're not within 6 months of picking the projects and we put out our call for projects, you can come in and you can ask for what we call an early allocation. And so you're basically saying, if I compete well enough, you will give me the money early and I can align it with the federal grant. And that's if you have a federal grant. We don't do it so much when agencies say they're applying for a federal grant, because shocking, every agency is applying for a federal grant and all of them don't get them. And we don't have enough money to be able to commit to every single federal grant opportunity that a city, county, or regional agency are looking for. But that's kind of how we do it. It's a lot of communication. So we talk with the feds, we talk with the state, we talk with CalSTA, we talk with Caltrans, we all talk across our agencies. Otay Mesa East, for example, there were numerous conversations about the ask, because the actual dollar figure of what the project was going to cost was changing in real time based on what the project was actually going to be. And so we're constantly talking about those things to try to align and make sure that we're able to bring in those federal dollars when we have those opportunities.
Now, just maybe a quick follow-up. Do you feel like since like EJA there was like a bonanza of the discretionary competitive grants from government, has it made it harder for you guys now to sort of hold money back because there's just so many opportunities now?
So we don't hold money back.
Okay.
we don't have enough money to hold money back. We program every single
But I guess
dollar.
that, yeah, like, just to have something available outside of the 2-year cycle, like, there's just so many discretionary grant programs now,
Nope,
it's gotta be
we don't.
crazy.
We don't.
Okay.
So if you're competing in our competitive program, so it is hard as an agency to leave money on the table when, and for example, our trade quarter enhancement program is roughly $1.4 billion every 2 years. We get about $3 billion worth of applications. And so the need, even without the federal funding, surpasses the funding we have.
Thank you.
This might be a little too specific, but I'm curious about your capital investments for transit projects. Yeah. could you
So-
talk a little bit about it?
I can talk about that. So our biggest program that's going to invest in transit projects is going to be our Solutions for Congested Corridors program. So while we can fund managed lanes in congested corridors, our best scoring projects are going to be projects that have a significant mode shift and have a significant GHG reduction to them. And so our number one project in our Solutions for Congested Corridors program last cycle was the BART to Silicon Valley extension. It's a $5 billion transit project. Now, did we give them $5 billion? No, I don't have $5 billion in that program. I have about $500 million, but we gave them about $100 million to match their federal grant. To your point about aligning with federal funding.
Hi, thanks for joining us today. So it's a really grim financial picture that we're hearing, not just from you, but Claire and I were at the CTF conference yesterday, and we met folks there who also said the same thing about like the gas tax is gonna run out. And with more and more electrification, we just can't rely on that funding anymore. So I guess my question is like two questions. One, like the user charge seems to be like an unpopular option, right? Like you're kind of
I'll say at this point
At
in
this
the
point.
politics.
right. I mean, that makes sense. It feels like people aren't gonna vote yes for that. Is there like a backup, something that you have that
There are a lot of backups. There are a lot, but maybe I'll talk about the politics of it, because I think the politics are more important than the mechanism. We will have a mechanism. The problem will be solved. And the reason the problem will be solved is because if we go back to the fact that we all work for politicians have to respond to voters. Voters want to see transportation delivered because it's a bipartisan issue. And so, and I'll give you this example from SB1, right? It's the same kind of scenario. SB1, before SB1, we have the same kind of conversation. Revenues are down, we're deleting projects. Guess what members of the legislature don't like? Well, I committed to delivering that project to my stakeholders. What do you mean you're deleting it? And then the conversation, there's a point in time where the politics start to shift. So it's important that we recognize right now it's not popular. And it's not popular for a lot of reasons, but I can come back in 2 years, 5 years, and I can say, well, we're on the precipice of passing a road user charge to replace the gas tax because members of the legislature are now feeling the pressure of not having enough revenue. So it's that need statement has to be strong enough to will the legislature to action.
that makes you feel better.
Yeah, it's not, we're not gonna fall off a cliff, I can guarantee you that, because even with SB1, right, we had a culvert fail. And normally we're like, oh, culvert failed, but yes, it's national news, everybody can see, now you gotta do something. And we're gonna have some of those, we're not gonna have any bridges fail, we're always going to fund bridges. If nothing else, we are going to fund bridges and maintenance of the system. But if we get to that point where we're having these tough conversations, I'm gonna be in the legislature every day with my beautiful map saying, here's your project. I'm pushing it out and I'm deleting it.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do about that? You don't like that? Give me some money. Go make the hard decision to get it done.
Can I ask a quick follow-up?
Yeah, of course.
Speaking of cliffs, BART is like on the verge of cutting service. They had that article out there that was saying we're gonna shut down these stations because we're pretty much on the edge of it. And history tells us that once that happens, it's really hard to get back service. Like, once you shut things down. Is there like any plan on that? Like,
There is a solution. The governor just signed one yesterday in the budget. So there is a program called the Transit Intercity Rail Program, which can fund transit operations. It is primarily a capital program. But the Bay Area came to the state of California and said, hey, can you help us? And the state said, well, we don't like it, but yeah, we can help you. And so what the state has done in the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program, and the legislature has done, is they've actually created a loan program within the Transit Intercity Rail Capital Program to help the transit operators in the Bay Area. It's more of it's a loan, but it's really a cash flow mechanism where they're going to pay us back with federal formula funds over time so that they don't have to make the tough cuts right now. And that will come through the commission. But we're basically using those capital dollars that are going to be spread out over many years. And we're using them to cash flow operations. And then the Bay Area is going to pay the state back so we can then deliver those capital projects with that. So we just found a solution that was signed by the governor yesterday.
Thank you.
There's a question online, and maybe you can talk about this in a broader context than a question if you like, but it's asking whether California's setting usage-based tax, considering the weight of vehicles, like the Netherlands have done to improve safety and keep road surfaces and good
It's
conditions.
amazing. We are doing that right now at the commission. We have so we call it our AB 251 Vehicle Weight Safety Study. And we are actually studying the reality that vehicles are becoming heavier over time. And the question is, will a fee promote those vehicles becoming safer or smaller or some of those things? And we're actually going to, if you want, you can listen to our commission meeting because we're actually bringing that study in draft form to our commission at our March commission meeting. So it is timely and a timely question. Unfortunately. So safety is connected to weight, and especially for passengers outside of the vehicles. So, and our vulnerable road users. But what we have found through our study is that because we have such a strong car culture, it would take roughly a $20,000 fee to change people's behavior per vehicle. We're clearly not implementing a $20,000 fee if I can't even get to 18 cents per mile. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do something. And so within our study, we do recommend kind of a voluntary opt-in kind of safety rating system for vehicle weight for the vehicles. The reason we recommend a optional opt-in, the commission, back to this question of what's our authority and what's our not authority, we do not have the authority to regulate passenger vehicles. That's the federal government, that's the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And so we're making it voluntary, but we're doing that. We're also talking about education, because one of the things we found is that when we talked to school districts in particular about vehicle weight, and one of our commissioners has a very strong passion about this, is that sometimes people talk about the size and the height of the vehicle, but not the weight of the vehicle. And we recognize that sometimes those things are synonyms and people don't realize they are synonyms. And so how do we educate people to understand the challenges and the dangers that we're feeling as well? And so we haven't quite put it up yet. It's in my inbox to review the last version of that draft, but it will be up shortly as we post our agenda for our March commission meeting.
Hi, my name is Troy Francisco. I'm actually with the County of Santa Barbara implementing solutions with the congestion corridor SB1 funds. For
You got
EV
the
charging.
one project.
Yeah, exactly, with SBK. So one of the things that I'm always looking for is funding for EV chargers. That's what I do day in and day out. There's funding from the Energy Commission, there's funding from CARB. And I'm wondering, if you provide a little bit of insight into like how that's going in terms of allocating SB1 dollars to like climate projects, like EV charging or transportation electrification, if this is something that you think the CTC should be more involved or less involved or.
So it's a double pronged question, politics. So I'll start with what we're doing. Within our trade corridor enhancement program, EV chargers are eligible. Within our STIP program, they're eligible. So there are many programs where they are eligible, but that does mean that a project has to be ready to go that is planning to do EV chargers. So we don't develop projects. We simply are on the back end of when a project is ready to request funding, we're there to fund it. But having said that, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, there was a bill introduced in the legislature to create a carve out in our trade corridor enhancement program to specifically fund zero emission infrastructure. That bill failed. Now, when bills fail in the legislature, I don't, as a state agency, I don't have the authority to implement what was proposed. And so even if it's a good idea, and I agree with the idea, if the legislature says no, I can't then go and implement it because we have a law in California called the Administrative Procedures Act, which basically says I cannot make the law more specific in which I implement. And so I have to have a plain English reading of the law, which limits a lot of things that we can do depending on the funds source.
During our lunch, you mentioned that at times you are involved in these hearings, the assembly. Can you talk a little bit about that process and like, you obviously have a team that helps you prepare, but how do you personally prepare knowing that you're gonna be, hearing questions? You prepare for grilling from specific members of the assembly?
Yeah.
And like, just going into it, like, can you talk a little bit about that process?
So I'm an athlete, so I prepare like an athlete. Like, I listen to music. Like on the soft skills side, I listen to music. I gotta relax. I gotta zen because depending on the hearing, sometimes hearings are lovely and they're like, oh, you guys are doing such a great job. Those are probably like 5% of my hearings. If you're going to a hearing, somebody wants something from you and somebody is probably not pleased. And depending on the hearing, you could be in the hot seat because something unethical happened and you're the executive director and you've got to answer to the legislature for what happened. Thank goodness I have not had to be one of those, but some of my peers have. But the way I prepare, so I have a ledge team. The ledge team tells me who the members are on the committee, what their personal issues are, because members of the legislature generally focus on 1 or 2 issue areas. They don't know everything about everything. So they tell me kind of what are the hot issues in their area, what are the hot issues that they care about, what are the things that will make them angry, what are the issues to stay away from, because you don't want to go into a hearing and be like, oh, road user charge is amazing, and then you've got, what are you talking about? Why would you do that? You don't have that authority in all of these things, because they're also going to remind you that you are a state agency. You don't make the laws, they do. And so there's this delicate balance of when you push back, when you just accept something, when they're just grandstanding, right? Because reality is, if it's an election year, you may be at a hearing because they need a public audience so they can grandstand. They may say nothing at all about any of your programs, and then at the end say, oh, you're great, I just want to make that point. And we've had that happen. I've had commissioners who are going through their confirmation process, and it was a Caltrans issue. We are not Caltrans. And it was, when are you going to open Highway 1? That's a great question. I'll get back to my team. So it's okay to say, I'll get back to my team as well. And so there's this classic dance of, do I answer? Do I not answer? Do I kick it back to the team to live another day? Because you also don't want to become front page news because the press is following those issues that you're talking about. And so it's a lot of studying. So if you thought you got out of school when you finished, you did not, because you're going to be studying for hearings, you're going to be studying for meetings, you're going to be studying for a lot of things, because reality is, do I know what the commission does? Yes. Am I the expert on what the commission does? No. And so my team is going to bring those things that are my weaknesses, right? I'm not an engineer. I'm not a programmer. I'm a planner. Half the time, do I know what my engineer is saying? Yeah, kind of. Sometimes I'm like, can you break it down a little more? And that's going to be true across all of you. You're going to have your strengths and you're going to have your weaknesses. Just make sure you fill the weaknesses with good people.
My question might be kind of like a two-part, but I feel like it's all in the same kind of theme. Like you mentioned, coming up with a strategic plan as an organization, but then like whoever is the governor can kind of also have an influence. Like how does that affect like your organization, or like can you kind of like influence them? And then I guess like the second part is within the state like Senate, or like they have a transportation committee. Like are they at all influenced by people who have spent their whole careers working in transportation, like from Caltrans or the other organizations, like kind of just the relationship between like the agencies and the politicians and like.
Yeah, so, our commission, the chair of Senate Transportation and the chair of Assembly Transportation are non-voting members, so they don't always come to our meetings, but they are members of the commission. They do come to us frequently when the bill is about the commission. They don't come to us when they don't think it's about the commission, so, especially when you get outside of the transportation committees, most staffers are not transportation specialists, so you will get a absurd bill that comes out and is put out there, and sometimes you even get them signed, depending on the politics of the issue. We try to influence, so this is why I have a ledge team. My ledge team builds relationships with legislative staffers at different legislative offices. And so sometimes you can get them to change the language after the bill is changed. Sometimes we are a unique agency that we can take positions on bills. So if the commission takes an opposed position on a bill, the bill's going to change. And the bill's going to change because some of my commissioners are independently politically powerful. So we have the president of the Carpenters Union. We have the president of the California State Association of Laborers. One of my commissioners used to be the governor's chief of staff. And so they can make phone calls. And they can make phone calls to say this isn't a good idea. And the members of the legislature will respect them when they do that sometimes. Sometimes they won't. But that's that political calculus on when do you do that, when do you not, when do you take a position versus having an informal conversation. I make conversations too, sometimes to the staff to say, hey, technically that doesn't make any sense. In terms of the relationship, we always work very closely together. We're not always, we're friendly, but we don't always agree. And that's okay, because sometimes, just like in leadership, sometimes you stand next to your team, sometimes you pull your team behind you screaming to get to the goal line. And it's the same way with the legislature, the same way with the governor and the governor's office. And so I have monthly meetings with the governor's office to talk about different issues that are coming up, whether it be from the federal government or from different regional agencies, so that we can collectively try to solve solutions, or at least acknowledge that we're not going to get there because either the law or some other political issue, because there are differences amongst our agencies, even though we're all transportation agencies, in terms of how we are viewed by our stakeholders. So it's a little bit of a pull and push, and sometimes tension and nails across tables kind of stuff. Yes.
So I have a question about like commissioners and their team. So like you talked about how some commissioners are independent, they're not filled with, they have their own political stance and they have own political power. And how does their, I'm assuming they're not like one alone person, right? They have their own team, they have their own staff members that help them. So
our commissioners, so let me start with this and then I'll let you finish your question. Our commissioners are paid $100 a day for 8 days a month. So they make $800 a month, $9,600 a year. The chair of CARB makes $200,000 a year. They are part-time commissioners and they have full-time jobs. So their full-time jobs help formulate some of their opinions. Our team fills in the void, and so they come to us with their opinions, and they are picked because of who they are. Yeah, and if I'm serious, like in all genuine, we have relationships with their team. So I can call their team members, and if they're going rogue or doing something ridiculous, we're like, that doesn't make any sense. And here's the politics that you're missing on it. This is what we're recommending, what we're recommending. And sometimes they'll just say, hey, talk to my ledge crew, talk to this person within their team. Some of them are not political. So where I have people who are professional lobbyists, I have an economic developer, I have somebody who works at a CBO, I have somebody who's retired. They are, for the most part, they are not transportation professionals. And the reason for that is we have a lot of conflicts of interest, because when you pick winners and losers and you can impact the value of somebody's land, you have a lot of conflicts and you can't make money off of a position that you hold.
Going back to the kind of question about hearings and preparing to answer questions well. That's something I'm always really impressed by with politicians, government workers. It's not something I feel like I'm personally very good at. And I'm curious, I feel like we don't get a lot of opportunities to practice doing that. It's kind of an unusual thing to answer questions under pressure like that. And I'm curious if you have tips on how you got better at navigating that, especially in a place where you have to be really careful about what you say, but you also want to be transparent and foster trust.
So I'll be honest, I watched it a lot. Like watched it. Like I remember one time when I was at SJCOG and I said one word and like for 5 minutes, the board kept repeating that one word and I was like, why? But you learn that you live.
Yeah.
Right? There's very few things that you can botch so royally that you can't recover from. Because you're gonna have a PR team that's gonna put a spin on you, wow, how did you turn that into that? That's amazing. But you're also going to learn that the world keeps turning. Right? We're not doing brain surgery, we're not doing heart surgery, nobody's gonna die. I'm not an engineer, so I'm not literally putting my name on the line on designing something. I'm literally talking about a policy issue that has a multitude of answers, and none of them are more right than the other. So one, don't take yourself too seriously, even if you're in front of the legislature, because you're gonna crack a joke, they're gonna crack a joke. Like I had one lady sitting next to me and she literally said we should defund all rural agencies and that would help solve our transportation problems. And I was like, well, I'm the state of California, we certainly don't agree with that. And everybody laughed and we moved on. Because you'll also have people up there that if they see you struggling, like we're all humans, we've all been there, they're probably gonna say something funny or pull you out and be like, I don't think they meant to say this. And you're like, no, I didn't, and give you an opportunity to correct something you said. So it's gonna be a lot of studying. When you're actually in front of the legislature, you read your script because you give it to them ahead of time. And my chair calls it kabuki theater. It's all theater. If you're before the legislature, they're gonna send you their questions beforehand. They're not gonna zing you because guess what? Even though I'm an independent agency, I work for the governor. If you make the governor look bad, then he's gonna have retribution on your bills and it's gonna be this horrible cycle. So they generally play nice. Now, when you're behind closed doors and it's just you and them, you're gonna have a different conversation. It's gonna be tougher, but in public, government has to look like it functions well and we make sure that it functions well. So you get a lot of those questions in advance, or you're gonna have the governor's office saying, here are the issues of the area that we're tracking, your team's gonna tell you, here are the issues. There aren't going to be a lot of surprises. Now, if you're at a local or regional board, you're gonna get a little bit more surprises because it's not as orchestrated. But even then, most people have a courtesy because nobody wants to embarrass you because they like you as a person. So they're going to tell you, hey, I have this question as a courtesy. It's kind of a gentleman's agreement kind of thing. Maybe you got this, yeah.
This kind of getting back to what we were talking about the previous question about climate change. I remember a previous conversation, someone was talking about how like local agencies were, prioritizing highway expansions because it was like it was good for the local politics, whereas the state goal was to reduce VMT, and so they're saying that like because of the nature of CTC, like they present projects and you have to either approve or deny. Do you have like, or you, I guess, do you have other ways of kind of putting a little bit more direction on policy, or is that something that you can't
We
really
do in a roundabout way. So when I talk about how we align all of these fund sources, right? We don't have enough money to fund every project, but neither do the regions or the cities. So it's the symbiotic relationship where they need us too. And when they touch our programs, we say things like, tell us how many GHG emissions you're reducing. Tell us how you're aligning your land use policies. Tell us how you're doing insert policy issue that the state wants to achieve. And reality is we have enough money that they follow the money. So even in our active transportation program, for example, we have $600 million over 4 years. That's not a lot of money across the state of California. But that program, the applications generate $2.5 billion worth of applications every 2 years. Guess what happens in those $2.5 billion worth of applications? They don't go back and change their project because they didn't compete well with us. They still have all the bells and whistles that we want them to achieve, but now they go and look for another fund source. Yeah, right.
Oh, yeah, for what it's worth, since my time in the US about a year and a half now, I'm very fascinated with, especially people from the CTC and cultures and all that, in the manner in which they have internal audit systems, whether it's just being transparent with the general public or inclusion of communities at all. What does external audits look like for CTC, for example?
We have an inspector general.
We do.
We do.
What does that look like?
So I'll give you an example. I have an audit right now. So if you remember that big fire down in Southern California on our facility. So there are two audits because they're underneath that facility. So where you see those open spaces under the interstate or the state highway system, so they're called airspaces. We lease those out to people. We leased that one out to someone. They had flammable fluids, they had pallets, they had failed fire marshal inspections. We had not gone and enforced making them change it before. We were going through an unlawful detainer, meaning we were evicting in the process of evicting them. But that was after many failed fire inspectors audits. We have the second version of that audit, which says that was not an isolated incident. We have a lot of those across the state of California. We're actually taking that to our commission this month and next month with Caltransit's response. But the auditor essentially said the state of California has been derelict in its duty. It has not been safe. We need to make it safe. We haven't collected enough money because we haven't included increased rents to fair market value. There's a lot of things wrong. And now, after you have an audit and you have audit findings, now you have to do a corrective action plan. You have 60 days to do the corrective action plan, and then their enforcement of the corrective action plan begins from there. So you don't have a choice but to correct the deficiencies when you have an audit. So we have a lot of different things, and we have that level of audit, not just on the airspace program, but we can request the inspector general do an audit on an individual product that we don't think is moving the right way or something's.
A couple of questions online, kind of related. The first is about if you have an office or some sort of program to help the general public and how to participate in CTC meetings.
We do. So we have, I don't have a big staff, I'll say that. I have 36 people. So we have 3 people who are dedicated to equity and engagement and teaching people how to engage. But all of my program managers actually will take any meeting with the public who calls us or asks us. My commissioners meet with the public as well. It can be as simple as, what is this program? It can be as simple as, we have people who our products are touching them and they want to call into our meetings who will reach out to us and say, how do I participate? And we'll walk them through, here's the link to the meeting, here's the item, here's how you comment on the item. And then we'll make sure we look for them when they're on our meeting because we can see the list of names because we're on Zoom, to make sure if they don't comment, to make sure we follow up and say, hey, did you still want to comment? Because it can be intimidating sometimes when you're not that process and it's very fast paced and moving.
Yeah. So sort of related is if you have any suggestions on how a member of the public can most effectively influence a transportation project.
Oh, yes, I do. I have lots of opinions about that. So the first thing, I'll be honest, if you're coming to the meeting, it's probably too late. Gotta start early in the process. The easiest place to influence the outcome of a transportation project is during the CEQA phase. Because once you get past CEQA, you've aligned your funding, you're moving into designing the project, you've selected your preferred alternative, and everybody's bought into what that product is going to be. So now that product has a name. And when projects have a name, they have politics attached to them and lots of money. And so the easiest places is at the local level while the product is being developed, including during the capital improvement program, right? Capital improvement program projects usually start as, we're gonna do this from point A to point B. Nobody's vested in point A to point B because we don't even know where it is. And so there's a lot of opportunities, but if you are before the commission and you're trying to influence the commission, the most important people don't tell my bosses this, are not the commissioners. It's not me either. It's my team who's writing the recommendation. Talk to them. Give them a call. They'll answer your calls. They'll tell you what they can and cannot do. They'll tell you what the law is. They'll tell you why we're making the recommendation. And you might find that they may even change their mind because of the conversation you've had with them. But staff is the most important in my opinion, because they're the ones who are doing the work and making the decisions that are going to be recommended up, right? I'm only going to get involved if it's on fire, it's political, it has a deadline, and a significant consequence. Outside of those things, my team is going to make a recommendation to me, and I'm probably going to go with it because I don't have enough time nor enough knowledge to make all the decisions across our agency. Anyone else? Oh yeah, sorry.
Is there certain agencies that constantly wins grants?
Can you speak a little louder? I'm
Is there
sorry.
certain agencies that constantly wins grants?
No, so we because there is a reality that Shasta can't compete well against LA, depending on what the metric is. We have geographic equity built into our programs because at the end of the day, someone in every county pays the gas tax. And so there's not a return to source. You were not guaranteed to get your population share or whatever, but it's politically challenging to have an agency who is paying into the gas tax every single year over year, never win. And so we think about those things. We also have some guidelines that say we're going to pick one rural project to make sure we're getting some rural projects. We also are very sensitive to tribal governments. They can't compete in all of our programs, but in our active transportation program and our local transportation climate adaptation program, they can compete. And so in our local transportation climate adaptation program, we have a set aside. In our ATP program, we don't have a set aside because one of the things that we also have to consider and we have to figure out how to do is because tribal governments are sovereign entities, up until 2 years ago, if they wanted to accept our money, we had to transfer it to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the federal government. That took like 3, 4, 5 years if it ever happened, and it went to a black box and fingers crossed it came back out so the tribe could do the project, where they had to waive their sovereignty. And they're not going to waive their sovereignty. And so we're still trying to figure out how to be better partners with tribes. But that's a really important thing that we need to figure out.
This is probably a quick question because of the nature of California, but I was wondering if you had any like interactions with other states, or I know there was talk about like a San Diego, Mexico, or like San Diego, Tijuana connection. If you interact with other countries, I guess.
So other states is much easier than other countries. So other states, absolutely. We talk to Nevada all the time. We talk to Hawaii, especially when it comes to road user charge. We actually have a tri-state meeting with Oregon and Washington every 2 years where we're talking about kind of similar issues across the boards. So we do that. We actually, if I hadn't canceled our road user charge meeting because of the politics, we were actually going to have New York and Utah come and talk to our road user charge and tell us what they were doing there. When it comes to other nations, it depends on what we're talking about as to who does the talking, and that includes tribal governments. There are very rigid rules. So in some cases, the federal government has to do the talking when we're across national border. In other cases, we can do some of the planning work. So on like the border discussion that we talked about with the cross-border stuff, we can do some of the conversations with the Tijuana and different things. In other cases, we cannot.
We will end with an easy question online. Do you hire student interns?
Yes, we do. We have a whole program.
All right. Well, we're pretty close to time, so if there's.
Add a leadership question since you said we can ask those.
You can ask me whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just curious. Like you probably at some point in your career must have come to a role where you were like, "Whoa! Like this just got real. Now I'm really actually important, and now, like I can't really screw up." So just kind of curious about the transition up to that point and what you think you did right as like a newcomer into the position.
I will say every step along the way where I got a promotion was that fear of, oh, they think I know what I'm doing.
Okay.
It's a natural fear. It's not, so if you get there, you're not unique. Just people don't say it out loud. I will say it out loud. Even when I got here, and I'll tell you this story. When I became the chief deputy of the commission, it was the first time that I was a deputy director of any agency. And I was talking to my boss, and I was like, "Oh God, I'm not qualified for this job." He laughed hysterically in my face, just laughed, good hard belly laugh. And I was like, "Oh well, I guess I'm qualified." And so you'll have those good people that remind you why you got the job in the first place. You got the job because you're the most qualified candidate, and that you have those skills. You just got to grow them. And so there's this process we call storming and norming in management. You're going to storm for a little bit while people get to know your management style, while you get to know your people. It's not that you're not qualified at the job. It's just that people are people. They're like, "Oh my gosh, it's changed. Ah!" It's okay. And so just remember that as you move up in your career, you're always going to doubt yourself until you make that first decision. And then as you continue to make decisions, they get easier and easier. I literally became the executive director of the commission in not so good a way. My predecessor was there one day, gone the same day, at the end of the meeting. And I was the executive director that day. Actually, I was on a flight from LA when our chair called and said, "Hey, Tanisha, will you kind of hold the ship down while we do this?" I'm crying right now. Can I have a minute? Yeah, I'll do it. And so just know that you belong. And those doubts are natural because the consequences of our decision are real, right? We make decisions about real people. And it just makes you a good person. Just means you're a good person.
Well, maybe on that note, that's a good one to end on. So let's give another round of thanks